The wind cut through Fifth Avenue like a blade that afternoon, slicing between glass towers and gold-lettered boutiques. Emma Carter, 7 months pregnant, moved slowly along the sidewalk, one hand on her belly, the other gripping a warm Starbucks cup. The city roared around her, cabs honking, luxury cars gliding past, pedestrians too busy to notice the world. Her soft gray coat barely kept out the chill. She stopped for a moment outside a Tiffany & Co. display window, watching a diamond necklace sparkle under the lights. Not out of envy, just curiosity. She used to dream about things like that, back when Ethan still looked at her with warmth instead of exhaustion. Now her dreams had shrunk to smaller wishes. Peace, a healthy baby, a night without crying. Then she saw it. An elderly woman stumbling near the curb. The woman's grocery bag split open, oranges rolling toward the street. Without thinking, Emma dropped her coffee, hurried forward, and knelt down despite her swollen belly. "It's okay, ma'am, I've got you," she said softly, her voice trembling from both effort and concern. The old woman groaned in pain, clutching her knee. "Oh, my dear, I lost my balance." Emma picked up the scattered groceries, helped her sit on a low bench near the glass window of a Cartier boutique. Her coat brushed against the woman's arm, smudging city dust across her sleeve, but she didn't care. And that's when the laughter came. "Oh my God," a sharp, high-pitched voice cut through the noise. "Is this real? You're actually doing this in public?" Emma froze. She didn't need to turn around to recognize that voice. Vanessa Reed. Vanessa stood just a few steps away, her red designer heels gleaming like sin under the afternoon light. Her long blonde hair curled perfectly around her smug smile. Beside her, holding a Mont Blanc pen and an expensive leather portfolio, was Ethan, Emma's husband. Vanessa raised her iPhone and started recording. "Look at this, Ethan. Your wife playing Florence Nightingale on Fifth Avenue, helping strangers for the camera?" She giggled cruelly. "How cute, pregnant and pretending to be an angel." Emma felt her throat tighten. "I'm not pretending," she whispered. "Oh, relax," Vanessa said, tilting her head. "We're just having a little fun. You should have told me your hobby is performing on sidewalks." Ethan's face flushed. "Vanessa, stop. Let's go." But he didn't move to help Emma. He didn't stop the recording. Emma's heart cracked a little more. The woman she was helping looked between them, confusion knitting her brows. "Is that your husband?" she asked quietly. Emma swallowed hard. "Yes, ma'am." The old lady's eyes darkened with something unreadable. She took Emma's trembling hand, squeezed it gently. "Kindness will never shame you, dear," she said in a low, steady voice. Vanessa smirked. "Maybe not, but poor taste will." She turned the phone toward Emma again, zooming in on her tear-streaked face. The crowd around them had begun to watch, some amused, some pitying. A man in a security uniform from the boutique stepped closer but hesitated, unsure whether to intervene. Ethan mumbled something under his breath, looking away as if he didn't know any of them. Emma wanted to scream, to demand respect, to ask why. But all she did was press her palm against her belly, feeling her baby kick. A reminder she wasn't alone. She helped the old woman to her feet. "Let's get you somewhere warm," she murmured. The woman nodded. "Thank you, sweetheart. What's your name?" "Emma." The woman smiled faintly, pain still flickering in her eyes. "Emma, my son will want to meet you." Emma blinked. "Your son?" The woman's lips curved into a mysterious smile. "Marco Rossi." And in that single name, a storm quietly began, one that would change all of their lives forever. Emma stood frozen as the crowd slowly dispersed, leaving behind the echo of Vanessa's laughter bouncing off glass walls. The old woman, Mrs. Rossi, had been taken home in a cab Emma insisted on paying for, though the woman kept murmuring, "You shouldn't have to." Now the silence of the street felt heavier than the cold wind. When Emma finally turned, Ethan and Vanessa were already walking away together. Vanessa's hand hooked around his arm like she owned him. Ethan didn't even look back. Not once. By the time Emma reached her small apartment near Central Park, her hands were trembling so hard she could barely unlock the door. She set down her purse, leaned against the wall, and let the tears she'd been holding back spill out. The apartment felt emptier than usual. No laughter, no warmth, just the faint hum of the refrigerator and the muted glow from her MacBook on the dining table. She took a deep breath, sat down, and opened a blank note on the screen. Her reflection glimmered faintly against it. Tired eyes, messy hair, and the curve of a belly that carried all her hopes. Dear baby, she typed. Today, Mommy learned that kindness hurts when people don't understand it. But we still do it anyway. Her fingers hovered over the keys as the phone buzzed. It was Ethan. She wiped her cheeks and answered, her voice steady. Ethan? Emma, look, about earlier. Don't, she cut in. You let her humiliate me. You stood there while she laughed. I didn't know she'd do that, he said defensively. Vanessa's important for business. She's handling a big client. I couldn't make a scene. So you let her make me one instead? There was silence. Then his tone turned cold. You're being dramatic. It's not like anyone cares. Emma swallowed the lump in her throat. You used to care. But the call ended before she finished. She stared at the phone until the screen went dark. Outside, rain began to fall. Soft at first, then steady, tapping against the window pane like tiny reminders of every tear she couldn't cry. The next morning, she woke to a ping on her phone. A message from an unknown number. Nice performance yesterday. Maybe next time bring a donation jar. Attached was a video, Vanessa's clip, posted on social media. Caption, pregnant woman fakes kindness for attention. Emma's stomach dropped. The video had over 10,000 views already. Comments flooded in. Cringe. She's definitely acting. People will do anything for clout these days. She scrolled until her vision blurred. Then she threw the phone onto the couch and buried her face in her hands. Her breathing grew uneven. Her baby shifted inside her, and she pressed her palm against her belly again. It's okay, she whispered. We'll be okay. A soft knock at the door startled her. When she opened it, the building's doorman, Frank, stood there holding a small envelope. This came for you, Mrs. Carter. Some fancy stationery. Smells expensive. Emma took it, confused. The paper was thick, ivory embossed with gold initials, ER. Inside, a handwritten note. Thank you for your kindness yesterday. Please don't let the cruelty of others define your worth. You'll hear from me soon, Eleanor Rossi. Emma read the message twice, then sank onto the couch, clutching it to her chest. Her tears weren't from shame this time. They were from something she hadn't felt in a long while. Validation. Outside her window, the rain finally stopped. A faint sunlight slipped through the clouds, resting gently on the gold edges of the card in her hands. But far away on a phone screen inside a luxury office, Vanessa laughed again, reposting the video with a new caption. Wait till you see what happens next. The apartment was quiet, except for the sound of rain dripping from the window frame. Emma sat on the couch, her hands tracing the embossed letters on Mrs. Rossi's note for what felt like hours. The card had become a strange comfort, proof that someone out there had seen her heart when the world saw mockery. When she heard the door unlock, she straightened. Ethan stepped in, raincoat dripping, tie loosened, eyes avoiding hers. He dropped his Mercedes key fob on the counter and muttered, "Long day." Emma rose slowly, holding her belly. "We need to talk." Ethan didn't look up. "Not tonight, Em. I'm exhausted." "You let your girlfriend humiliate me in public," she said quietly. He froze. "Don't start that again." "I'm not starting anything. It already happened." Her voice shook. "You stood there and let her record me while I was helping a stranger. Do you know what that did to me?" Ethan exhaled hard, rubbing his temple. "Vanessa didn't mean it that way. She what? She laughed at your pregnant wife in the street?" He turned, irritation flashing in his eyes. "God, you're so sensitive lately. Everything is drama with you." Emma stared at him, disbelief cutting through her exhaustion. "I'm 7 months pregnant, Ethan. I'm not sensitive. I'm tired, scared, and doing this alone even though you're standing right here." The words hung heavy between them. Outside, a car horn blared, echoing through the narrow street. Ethan grabbed a towel from the kitchen and started drying his hair, as if pretending the conversation wasn't happening. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under at work. Vanessa helps me close deals. She's connected. If I upset her—" Emma interrupted. "So protecting your image is more important than protecting your family?" Ethan's jaw clenched. "Don't twist this. You think it's easy keeping this lifestyle? The rent, the car, the insurance? You don't even work anymore." The words hit like a slap. Emma stepped back, blinking away tears. "I stopped working because you said you wanted me safe during the pregnancy." He looked at her then, and for a brief second, guilt flickered behind his tired eyes. But it faded fast. "Maybe I said that because I thought you'd use the time to relax, not stir up drama." Emma's voice broke. "Drama? Ethan, your mistress made a fool out of me online. There are strangers calling me names, saying I faked everything. You could have stopped her with one word. You didn't. Ethan sighed, putting the towel down. Look, I'll talk to her. She just gets carried away. Don't take it so personally. Emma shook her head. You already did talk to her. You told her I was overreacting, didn't you? He didn't answer. His silence was louder than any confession. She felt something inside her crack. Not anger, not despair, but the quiet realization that love alone couldn't fix what pride and betrayal had destroyed. Ethan's phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up with a message. Vanessa. Dinner tomorrow? Same suite? Emma's gaze dropped to it. Ethan reached for the phone too late. Her voice was calm, icy. I hope she's worth losing everything for. He started to speak, but she walked past him into their small bedroom. On the nightstand sat her worn journal, the one she'd been writing to the baby. She opened it and wrote a single line. We deserve peace, even if it means walking away. She closed the book, turned off the light, and lay down. Her baby kicked gently, as if agreeing. In the other room, Ethan poured himself a drink, unaware that the foundation of his marriage had already begun to crumble beyond repair. The morning sun broke through the blinds, but it brought no warmth. Emma sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a cup of untouched tea. The silence was suffocating, the kind of silence that screams louder than words. Ethan had already left for work without saying goodbye. Only the faint smell of his cologne lingered, mixed with the bitterness of betrayal. Her phone buzzed on the counter again and again. At first, she ignored it. Then curiosity, or maybe dread, made her pick it up. Dozens of notifications flooded her screen. Texts, mentions, links. Her name was everywhere. Emma Carter, the fake Good Samaritan. Pregnant woman stages kindness for attention. Street drama on Fifth Avenue, real or staged. Her stomach tightened. She opened one of the videos. There she was, kneeling beside the old woman, her face full of concern. But the clip had been edited. Vanessa's cruel laughter was gone, replaced by captions and dramatic background music. The text across the screen read, Caught on camera, woman fakes kindness to go viral. Emma felt her blood run cold. The video already had over 100,000 views. Comment after comment slashed through her like knives. She's acting for clout. Her belly's probably fake too. She just wants sympathy. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled. She wanted to defend herself, to scream the truth into the void, but she knew the internet didn't care about truth, only entertainment. Her doorbell rang. Startled, she wiped her face and opened the door to find her friend and former coworker, Lily, standing there with a worried look. Emma, I saw the video, Lily said gently. Are you okay? Emma tried to smile but failed. No, I don't even know how it got this far. Lily walked in, setting down a bag of groceries. It's all over social media. People are sharing it on TikTok, Instagram, even Reddit. Someone's pushing this hard. Emma sank into a chair. Vanessa, she whispered. Lily frowned. Ethan's Vanessa? Emma nodded, tears blurring her vision. She recorded me, twisted the story, and now everyone thinks I'm a liar. Lily reached across the table, taking her hand. You don't deserve this. People saw what she did, right? Emma shook her head. No one saw the full thing. The security cameras at the boutique might have, but I don't know how to get that footage. Before Lily could reply, Emma's phone rang again. An unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Hello? A calm, deep male voice came through. Is this Mrs. Emma Carter? Yes, who's calling? My name is Marco Rossi, the man said. My mother, Eleanor Rossi, told me what happened on Fifth Avenue. Emma froze. The name carried a weight she couldn't quite describe, the kind that made people listen. Marco continued, I've seen the video online. It's a disgrace. My mother was deeply hurt by how those people treated you. I'd like to meet you if you're willing. Emma blinked, unsure what to say. Why? Because, he said simply, when someone helps my family, I don't forget. Before she could respond, the line clicked off. Lily looked at her, eyes wide. Marco Rossi, as in the Rossi family? Restaurants, real estate, logistics? I don't know who he is, Emma interrupted softly, but he sounds serious. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She watched the city lights flicker through the window and wondered if the stranger on the phone could somehow stop the nightmare that her life had become. Then, just before midnight, another message appeared on her screen, from a private number. Tomorrow, Little Italy. 2 p.m. You'll recognize me. and for the first time in weeks, Emma felt something spark inside her. Not fear, but the faintest glimmer of hope. The next afternoon, Emma found herself standing in front of a small Italian restaurant on Mulberry Street. The sign above the door read Rossi's Trattoria in elegant gold script. She hesitated, her fingers brushing over her baby bump, as if to draw courage from the tiny heartbeat within her. She didn't know why she came. Maybe curiosity, maybe desperation. Inside, the smell of garlic and baked bread filled the air. Soft Italian music played in the background, and waiters in crisp white shirts moved gracefully between tables. Everything felt old world, dignified, like a place where time had stopped before cruelty existed. A waiter approached. "Mrs. Carter?" Emma nodded nervously. "This way, please." He led her to a private booth in the back, where a man in a dark tailored suit sat waiting. His presence was impossible to ignore. Calm, composed, yet carrying an energy that made people instinctively sit straighter. His black hair was slicked back neatly, his eyes sharp but not unkind. "Mrs. Carter," he greeted, standing to shake her hand. "I'm Marco Rossi." "Thank you for meeting me," she said softly. He gestured for her to sit. "My mother told me what you did. She said you helped her when no one else would." Emma shook her head. "Anyone would have done the same." Marco smiled faintly. "That's not true. In this city, people walk past pain every day. You didn't." For a moment, Emma didn't know what to say. The weight of his gaze made her feel seen, not as a victim, but as a person who had done something that mattered. "I saw the video," Marco continued. "It's cruel. Whoever that woman was, she crossed a line. Her name is Vanessa Reed," Emma said quietly. "She's my husband's co-worker." Marco leaned back slightly, steepling his fingers. "And your husband allowed this?" Emma hesitated. "He didn't stop her." Marco's expression hardened. "Then he's no husband at all." A waiter arrived with 2 glasses of water. Emma noticed the subtle glint of a Rolex on Marco's wrist. Understated, not boastful. He carried wealth the way others carried authority, effortlessly. He reached into his briefcase and placed a small tablet on the table. "I pulled security footage from the Tiffany boutique across the street. My family owns several properties along that block. I thought it might help you." Emma stared at him, stunned. "You have the footage?" He nodded. "Every second of it." He tapped the screen and the video began to play. The real video. There she was, helping Mrs. Rossi, tears in her eyes, no audience, no performance. Then Vanessa appeared, her sneer caught in crystal clarity. Ethan stood awkwardly beside her, saying nothing. Marco paused the video. "This will clear your name," he said simply, "but I think it should do more than that." Emma blinked. "What do you mean?" He leaned forward slightly, voice calm but laced with steel. "Some people only understand consequences when they face them publicly. Tell me, what do you want, Mrs. Carter?" Her throat tightened. "I just want them to stop hurting me. I want peace for my baby." Marco studied her, then nodded. "Peace is earned by truth, and truth," he said, glancing at the paused image of Vanessa's face frozen mid-laugh, "will be seen." He handed her a card. "There's a charity gala at the Plaza Hotel this weekend. My family is sponsoring it. My mother wants you to attend as our guest." Emma's eyes widened. "Me? Why?" He smiled slightly. "Because sometimes the best revenge is simply standing tall where they said you couldn't." Emma looked down at the card, her heart racing. The Plaza Hotel, a world far from her pain. She didn't know it yet, but that single invitation would become the stage where every secret and every betrayal would finally be exposed. Vanessa Reed sat at the bar inside the Park Avenue office lounge, swirling a glass of champagne as the skyline of Manhattan glimmered through the window. She looked perfect. Glossy hair, designer dress, and the kind of confidence that came from believing she'd already won. Beside her, Ethan Carter scrolled through emails on his iPad, pretending to work, pretending not to notice the stares from coworkers who whispered behind their hands. "Why so quiet, Ethan?" Vanessa teased, leaning closer, her perfume thick with honey and ambition. "Still feeling guilty about your little wife?" Ethan sighed, not meeting her eyes. "Don't call her that." Vanessa laughed, a sharp sound that bounced off the marble walls. "Oh please, she's practically a celebrity now. Pregnant woman exposed as fake. It's trending everywhere. You should thank me for giving your name some free publicity." "That wasn't free," Ethan muttered. "It cost me my marriage." Vanessa smirked. "You lost something that was already breaking." Be honest, when was the last time she made you feel alive? Ethan didn't answer. His silence was a quiet confession. Vanessa leaned back, crossing her legs. Besides, this is New York. People forget scandals faster than coffee cools. In a week, everyone will move on. But she was wrong. That same morning, Emma's real video, the unedited footage Marco had shown her, had begun circulating privately among certain media contacts. The Rossi name carried weight, and Marco's people were patient. They were waiting for the right moment, the gala, to expose the truth. Vanessa didn't know that yet. She only knew power and how to wield it like a weapon. By the way, she said, flipping her hair, we're invited to the charity gala at the plaza. Big clients, influencers, maybe even the mayor. You'll come with me, right? Ethan hesitated. The plaza? Black tie, champagne fountains, the whole deal. It'll be fun. You need to look like you're moving on. He frowned. Vanessa? She might be there. Vanessa grinned, eyes glinting with malice. Even better. At that same moment, across the city, Emma sat in her small apartment staring at the invitation card from Marco. Her hands shook slightly as she typed an email to confirm attendance. She wasn't sure what terrified her more, the idea of seeing Ethan again or walking into a room full of people who had seen her humiliation online. But then she remembered Marco's words. Sometimes the best revenge is standing tall. So she pressed send. Meanwhile, Vanessa was posting on social media, an Instagram story showing her champagne glass and the caption, "Some women are born to shine, others just reflect the light." The comments filled instantly with heart emojis and fake admiration. Ethan watched her, uneasy. You really enjoy this, don't you? Vanessa looked at him coolly. I enjoy winning, and I'm not done yet. She picked up her phone and called someone from PR. Make sure the press knows I'll be at the plaza, and have them list Ethan Carter as my guest. Ethan turned sharply. You what? Relax, she said sweetly. If you show up with me, people will know where your loyalty lies. That little pity storm around Emma will fade. No one likes a woman who plays the victim forever. He opened his mouth to argue but said nothing. Maybe part of him believed her. Maybe he was too tired to fight. Vanessa smiled, victory glittering in her eyes like the city lights behind her. She lifted her glass, admiring her reflection in the rim. What she didn't notice was the man sitting at the far end of the bar, watching quietly. Marco Rossi's assistant, recording every cruel word she spoke. The city never really slept, but Emma's apartment did. The only light came from the lamp beside her bed, casting a soft glow over the open book in her lap. Women Who Run with the Wolves. The pages had been turned so many times the corners curled slightly, as if the words themselves had been touched by exhaustion. Her baby kicked gently, a tiny reminder that life still moved forward even when her world felt like it had stopped. She smiled faintly and whispered, It's okay, little one. Mommy's got you. But her voice trembled. She hadn't told anyone she'd lost her appetite, that she barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Vanessa's cruel smile, Ethan's silence, and the camera lens capturing her shame. Sometimes she dreamed of falling, the way Mrs. Rossi had, only this time, no one came to help her up. A soft buzz broke the quiet. Her phone lit up with a new message from an unknown number. You're stronger than you think. Rest tonight. Big days ahead. No name, no signature. But Emma somehow knew who it was. Marco Rossi. She stared at the message for a long moment before placing her phone on the nightstand. Then, carefully, she pulled out her old leather journal and began to write again. Dear baby, she wrote, tonight I'm scared, but I'm also grateful. Because even when the world laughed, someone believed in me. Maybe tomorrow I'll believe in myself again. She closed the book and pressed it to her heart. The sound of her front doorbell startled her. It was nearly midnight. She stood, heart racing, and shuffled slowly toward the door. When she opened it, she found Mrs. Eleanor Rossi herself, the elegant woman from Fifth Avenue, standing in the hallway, a shawl draped around her shoulders. Mrs. Rossi? Emma gasped. What are you doing here? The older woman smiled kindly. Please call me Eleanor. I was nearby visiting a friend and thought I'd check on you. Emma stepped aside. Of course, come in. Eleanor's eyes softened as she looked around the modest apartment. You live simply. It's peaceful. Emma gave a small laugh. It used to be. Lately it's just quiet. Eleanor took her hand. Quiet isn't always bad. Sometimes it's where we find our strength. They sat together, two women from different worlds bound by something invisible. Respect, pain, maybe both. Eleanor said gently, "My son told me you're coming to the gala. I'm glad." Emma hesitated. "I'm not sure I belong there." Eleanor tilted her head. "Why not? You showed more grace on the sidewalk that day than most people show in a lifetime. That's the kind of woman who belongs anywhere." Emma's eyes welled. "They'll all be there, won't they? Ethan, Vanessa." "Yes," Eleanor said softly, "but they'll be wearing masks. You won't need one." For a while they just sat in silence. Outside, rain began to fall again, steady and soft against the windows. Eleanor reached into her bag and pulled out a small box wrapped in white paper. "Consider this a mother's gift," she said. Emma opened it to find a silver bracelet engraved with one simple phrase, "Kindness is never wasted." Her throat tightened. "It's beautiful." Eleanor smiled warmly. "When people mock goodness, it's because they fear it. Don't hide yours." They hugged before Eleanor left. For the first time in weeks, Emma felt calm. She placed the bracelet on her wrist, letting the metal cool against her skin like armor. She walked to the window and looked out at the city, the lights shimmering through the drizzle. Somewhere out there, her enemies were laughing. But she no longer cared. Because beneath the storm, something inside her was changing. Her fear was slowly turning into quiet fire. Saturday evening arrived like the calm before a storm. Manhattan's skyline shimmered in the fading light, and the Plaza Hotel stood tall and radiant, its chandeliers spilling gold across the marble floors. The charity gala had begun, a swirl of black tuxedos, glittering gowns, and champagne flutes clinking under soft jazz. In a quiet corner of her apartment, Emma stared at herself in the mirror. She almost didn't recognize the woman looking back. Eleanor had sent over a soft, ivory maternity gown earlier that day. Elegant but modest, paired with a silk shawl that draped beautifully over her shoulders. Her hair, once carelessly tied, now framed her face in gentle waves. The silver bracelet on her wrist caught the light, its engraving a whisper of courage. Kindness is never wasted. She took a deep breath and whispered, "You can do this." Downstairs, a black Mercedes waited. Marco's driver greeted her respectfully and opened the door. The ride down Fifth Avenue felt surreal. The city lights blurred through the window, and Emma could see her reflection. Still tender, still scared, but glowing with quiet strength. When she stepped into the grand lobby of the plaza, conversation paused for a heartbeat. The woman who had been mocked online, the one they called the faker, had arrived. But she wasn't broken. She was radiant. Eleanor approached first, graceful in a navy gown, her smile motherly and proud. "You look beautiful, dear." Emma smiled nervously. "Thank you for everything. I almost didn't come." "I'm glad you did," Eleanor said, squeezing her hand. "Tonight isn't about them. It's about truth." A few photographers caught sight of Marco Rossi entering the ballroom, tall, poised, in a perfectly tailored black suit. The crowd turned their attention to him instantly, whispers rippling like wind through silk. He walked straight toward Emma, his gaze calm, respectful. "Mrs. Carter?" he greeted, offering his arm. "Shall we?" Emma hesitated, then placed her hand on his arm. Together they entered the ballroom under the soft glow of chandeliers. Every head turned. Across the room, Vanessa nearly choked on her champagne. She stood beside Ethan, who looked equally stunned. "You have got to be kidding me," Vanessa hissed. "She's here, with him?" Ethan swallowed hard. "That's Marco Rossi. Why is she with him?" Vanessa forced a laugh that didn't sound like one. "Probably invited herself. He's just being polite." But the tremor in her hand betrayed her. Meanwhile, Emma and Marco greeted other guests, city officials, entrepreneurs, and donors. Everyone seemed drawn to her calm presence, unaware that she was the same woman from that viral video. A familiar voice broke through the music. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced the gala host, "tonight we honor those who remind us of compassion and grace in a world that often forgets them." Emma felt her pulse quicken. Marco's eyes met hers briefly, a silent reassurance. Vanessa's laughter from across the room sliced through the moment. Compassion and grace? Oh, this should be good. Emma ignored it. She focused on breathing, on staying steady, on remembering Eleanor's words. "You don't need a mask." As the night went on, Marco excused himself to speak with the event staff. Eleanor kept close by Emma's side, chatting lightly about the decor, the roses, the music, all to keep her calm. The sound system crackled, signaling the start of a short tribute presentation. Guests turned their eyes to the large LED screen at the center of the room. Eleanor leaned in and whispered, "Stay brave." The lights dimmed. The first frame appeared, Fifth Avenue, a woman in gray kneeling beside an old lady. Emma froze. Her heart thundered. It was the original footage, unedited. Gasps filled the room as Vanessa's mocking voice echoed clearly through the speakers. Ethan's face went pale. Vanessa's smile vanished, and in that single instant, the mask she had worn so perfectly began to shatter in front of everyone. The ballroom fell silent. All that could be heard was the echo of Vanessa's own laughter playing from the giant LED screen. Her mocking voice, once a source of power, now sliced through the air like glass. "Look at this, Ethan. Your wife playing Florence Nightingale on Fifth Avenue." The crowd turned, eyes darting between the screen and Vanessa, whose smile had turned stiff, her knuckles white around the stem of her champagne glass. On screen, the rest of the footage rolled. Emma's trembling hands lifting Mrs. Rossi, her soft voice saying, "It's okay, ma'am, I've got you." And then the old woman's words, "Kindness will never shame you, dear." A wave of murmurs spread across the room. People exchanged confused, then disapproving looks. From the front of the ballroom, Marco Rossi stepped up to the podium. The spotlight found him, calm and composed, his voice low but firm. "The woman in that video," he began, "is Mrs. Emma Carter. She helped my mother when no one else did. What the world saw online was a lie, a cruel manipulation of her kindness." Emma stood near the back, frozen. She hadn't known he'd planned to show the video tonight. Eleanor reached for her hand, squeezing gently. "Let the truth breathe," she whispered. Marco continued, his gaze sweeping across the crowd. "The full footage from the boutique's cameras shows exactly what happened that day. Some of you may recognize the voices, because the people responsible are in this room." A hush fell. On the screen, Vanessa's laughter filled the space again, followed by her cruel words. "Maybe next time bring a donation jar." The clip cut to Ethan standing silently beside her, his face expressionless. Gasps. Whispers. Someone in the crowd muttered, "That's Ethan Carter from Braden Real Estate." Ethan's face drained of color. He looked around as if searching for a door that didn't exist. Vanessa's jaw clenched. "Turn that off," she shouted suddenly, her voice breaking through the tension. "This is private. You can't just—" Marco's calm voice interrupted her. "Public humiliation deserves a public truth." He motioned to his assistant, who paused the video at the exact frame where Vanessa's smirk froze in time. Her cruelty was immortalized, larger than life on a 30-foot screen. Vanessa spun toward Ethan, eyes wild. "You said this wouldn't happen. You said—" Ethan took a step back. "Vanessa, I didn't know he had the footage." "Don't you dare," she snapped. "You promised me." Marco raised a hand, silencing them both. "Promises built on cruelty tend to collapse quickly," he said quietly. The crowd was entranced, half in disbelief, half in awe. Reporters whispered among themselves, already sensing a story that would explode by morning. Emma stood trembling. She wanted to disappear, yet some part of her, the part that had been silent too long, felt the first breath of justice. Marco turned toward her. "Mrs. Carter," he said through the microphone, "on behalf of my family, thank you for what you did. My mother is safe because of your compassion. You reminded us that dignity still exists, even when others choose mockery." The audience began to applaud, slowly at first, then stronger, rising into a wave of respect that filled the room. Emma's eyes welled with tears. She wasn't used to being seen this way, not as a victim, but as a woman with quiet strength. Across the room, Vanessa tried to force a smile, but her hands shook. Ethan leaned in to whisper, "Let's leave." Vanessa hissed, "If we walk out now, we're finished." Eleanor Rossi stepped forward, her voice clear and unwavering. "My son and I believe kindness should be celebrated, not ridiculed. I'd like to invite Mrs. Carter to join us on stage." Emma hesitated, then took a deep breath. The applause grew louder as she walked forward, each step lighter than the last. Vanessa's glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the marble floor. And as Emma reached the stage, the woman who had once been humiliated now stood under the same lights that once burned her. This time as the symbol of truth itself. The sound of applause echoed through the ballroom, bouncing off the gold pillars and chandeliers. Emma stood beside Marco at the podium, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. The spotlight felt heavy on her skin, But she didn't shrink this time. She lifted her chin and met the crowd's gaze. Not with pride, but with quiet dignity. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I never meant to be seen. I only wanted to help someone who fell." She paused, her hands resting protectively on her stomach. But what hurt the most wasn't being mocked by strangers. It was realizing the person I trusted most watched it happen and did nothing. The audience held its breath. Marco glanced at her, his expression respectful. He hadn't asked her to speak, but now no one could look away. Ethan stood at the edge of the crowd, frozen. Vanessa gripped his arm tightly, nails digging into his sleeve. "She's turning this on you," she hissed. Emma continued, her voice gaining strength. "My mother taught me that kindness isn't weakness. That standing up for someone doesn't make you small, it makes you human. But lately, the world seems to have forgotten that." Her words struck something deep in the audience. Even the waiters paused to listen. Marco took the microphone then. "Mrs. Carter is right," he said. "We live in a time when cruelty goes viral faster than compassion. But tonight, we saw the truth." He turned to his assistant, who handed him a sleek USB drive. "And there's one more truth we should see before this night ends." The lights dimmed again. The massive screen flickered back to life. But this time, it wasn't Fifth Avenue. It was a private video from inside the Park Avenue lounge. Vanessa, laughing beside Ethan, swirling champagne as she sneered, "You lost something that was already breaking." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Marco's assistant had recorded her perfectly. Every cruel word, every smirk. Vanessa's face drained of color. "That's illegal," she cried, her voice cracking. Marco's tone stayed calm. "It's not illegal to protect the truth. You made this public the moment you used a lie to destroy someone's life." The audience erupted in whispers. Someone shouted, "She's finished." Cameras flashed. Ethan tried to speak. "This isn't what it looks like." Marco cut him off sharply. "It looks exactly like betrayal, Mr. Carter. A man who stood by while his wife was humiliated, and a woman who turned cruelty into entertainment." Ethan's shoulders sagged. For the first time, shame replaced his anger. Vanessa stepped forward, her voice rising with desperation. "You don't understand. She wanted attention. She used me." Emma shook her head slowly. "No, Vanessa, you just thought my kindness made me weak. You were wrong." The crowd applauded again, not loud, but steady. Eleanor Rossi stepped onto the stage, elegant and composed. "I believe an apology is in order," she said. "Not privately, but publicly, to the woman you mocked and to every mother who's ever been told she's not enough." Vanessa's lips trembled. "I'm sorry," she said finally, her voice small. "I was wrong." Emma didn't gloat. She simply nodded, accepting the apology not as forgiveness, but as closure. Ethan looked at her helplessly. "Emma, please." But she turned away. "You already made your choice." The music swelled softly as Marco guided her down from the stage. The crowd parted for them, some reaching out to touch her shoulder, others whispering words of admiration. By the time they reached the exit, Emma felt lighter than she had in months. Outside, under the glowing awning of the plaza, she looked up at the night sky. The air was cool, clean, her lungs filled for the first time without fear. Marco stood beside her. "You handled that beautifully," he said quietly. Emma smiled faintly. "No, I just told the truth." And as they walked away, the lights of Fifth Avenue reflected in her eyes, no longer as a woman broken by shame, but as one reborn in her own strength. The next morning, New York woke up buzzing. The video from the Plaza Gala, the full unedited footage, had already gone viral. Every news outlet ran the same headline: "Truth unfolds at the Plaza. Pregnant woman vindicated, influencer exposed." Emma didn't even have to open her phone. Her apartment phone rang non-stop. Journalists, talk shows, charity organizations, even strangers thanking her for reminding people what kindness looks like. But she ignored them all. She didn't want fame. She just wanted peace. Across town, the world was far less kind to Ethan and Vanessa. Vanessa's face was plastered everywhere. Not as the glamorous PR consultant she'd tried to be, but as the woman who humiliated a pregnant stranger for fun. Her clients dropped her one by one. Sponsors pulled contracts. The luxury boutique that once sent her free clothes sent a cold legal notice demanding the return of gifted merchandise. She sat alone in her penthouse, still in her sequined gown from the gala. Mascara streaked down her face. Her phone buzzed with messages. "Shame on you. You disgust me." You're cancelled. Vanessa threw the phone across the room, where it shattered against the wall. This isn't supposed to happen to me, she muttered, her voice trembling. I was the one in control. But control was gone, replaced by silence, the kind that only follows when the world stops clapping. Meanwhile, Ethan Carter stood in his office, staring at a group of partners from Braden Real Estate. Their faces were grim. Ethan, the senior partner said, sliding a folder across the table. We've reviewed the footage. It's clear you were involved in misconduct that damaged the firm's image. You're suspended indefinitely. Ethan's throat went dry. It was a personal matter. Your personal life became public the moment you let it happen on Fifth Avenue, the man interrupted. Our clients are pulling back. We can't afford your scandal. Ethan nodded slowly. There was nothing left to say. He left the office building with a box of his belongings, his Mont Blanc pen, his framed diploma, a photo of him and Emma from happier days. The irony stung. He used to think success was measured by wealth, prestige, the car he drove. Now he had all of that and nothing else. That night, he sat alone in his Mercedes, parked outside Emma's apartment building. He watched the lights flicker in her window but couldn't bring himself to go up. He had no right to. Inside, Emma sat with Eleanor Rossi at her small kitchen table. A pot of tea steamed gently between them. Eleanor smiled softly. The world finally saw who you really are, dear. Emma shook her head. They saw a story, but I just want to live quietly now. For my baby. Eleanor reached across the table, squeezing her hand. Quiet doesn't mean small. You showed strength when the world tried to crush you. Don't forget that. Emma smiled faintly. I won't. Across the table, Marco entered with his calm, steady presence. The firm handling your case has arranged for a restraining order against the online harassment, he said. You won't have to worry about Vanessa again. Thank you, Emma said sincerely. I don't want revenge anymore. I just want peace. Marco nodded, his expression thoughtful. Peace is the rarest form of victory. The three of them sat in silence, the city humming softly outside. For the first time in months, Emma felt safe. Far away, Vanessa opened her laptop and saw her own reflection staring back. Desperate, hollow, irrelevant. Ethan's name was trending too, attached to the word disgraced. And while they fell deeper into the pit they had dug for others, Emma rose quietly above it, not through power but through grace that no scandal could destroy. A week passed since the gala, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Emma could breathe. The noise had quieted. The hateful messages disappeared, replaced by notes of support, mothers, nurses, strangers thanking her for standing tall. Still, she knew peace could be fragile. That afternoon she was folding tiny baby clothes on her couch when her phone rang. It was Dr. Mason, her OB-GYN. Emma, he said gently, how have you been feeling lately? Any contractions, headaches, swelling? A little back pain, she said, smiling faintly. I think the baby's just getting ready to meet me. There was a pause. You should take it easy. Too much stress can trigger early labor. Emma promised she would. But that night, peace shattered again. It started with a call from her bank. Mrs. Carter, we're just confirming you're transferring $8,000 to Ethan Carter? Emma froze. No, I'm not. The banker hesitated. Strange, the request came from your joint account. Her pulse spiked. She'd forgotten about that shared account. Ethan still had access. Within minutes, she was on the phone with Marco's lawyer, Mrs. Kaplan. The older woman's voice was calm but firm. Don't worry, Emma. We'll freeze the transfer and start the paperwork to separate your finances completely. Emma sank onto the couch, one hand gripping her belly. The baby kicked, sensing her panic. Later that evening, as rain tapped the window, someone buzzed her door. She wasn't expecting anyone. Who is it? She called out. It's Ethan. Her breath caught. When she didn't answer, he spoke again. Emma, please, I just need to talk. 5 minutes. Against her better judgment, she unlocked the door but left the chain on. He looked worn down, unshaven, his once polished suit wrinkled. You won't even open the door all the way? He asked bitterly. Emma's voice was steady. You tried to take money from me, he sighed, leaning against the frame. I needed it. I lost my job. I was desperate. That's not my fault. I know. His voice cracked. I made mistakes. Vanessa? Don't, she interrupted sharply. Don't say her name in my home. He rubbed his face, tears threatening. I miss you, Em. I miss us. I just want to see the baby when he's born. She hesitated. Part of her wanted to slam the door. Another part, the one that still remembered who he used to be, softened. "If you want to be part of his life," she said quietly, "then start by respecting mine." Ethan nodded, eyes glistening. "I will. I promise." But before she could reply, he looked past her shoulder and noticed a photo on the table. Emma, Eleanor, and Marco at the gala. His expression changed. "So this is who you're with now?" he said coldly. "The guy who humiliated me in front of everyone?" "Marco didn't humiliate you," she said firmly. "You did that yourself." His hands clenched. "You think you're better than me now? Because some rich guy took pity on you?" Her heart pounded. "You need to leave, Ethan." He stared at her for a long moment, jaw tight, then turned and walked away. Emma shut the door, locked it, and slid to the floor. Her whole body shook, but she refused to cry. Instead, she whispered, "You're safe, baby. Mommy's here." Moments later, her phone buzzed again. A message from Marco. "I heard he came by. Don't open the door next time. From now on, you're protected." She stared at the message, relief flooding her chest. Outside, unseen in the shadows, a black car idled at the corner. Marco's security detail watching, waiting, making sure the man who once broke her never got the chance to do it again. 2 days after Ethan's uninvited visit, the sun finally returned to New York. The storm that had soaked the city now left everything washed clean. Sidewalks gleaming, air sharp with spring chill. Emma sat by her window, sipping decaf coffee from a chipped mug, the bracelet Eleanor had given her glinting in the light. The baby was restless that morning, kicking as if to remind her that life wouldn't slow down, no matter how much she wanted it to. Her phone buzzed again. A message from Mrs. Kaplan, Marco's lawyer. "Good news. The joint accounts are frozen, and the bank confirmed Ethan can't access any funds. Also, I've filed a restraining order request, standard procedure after last night's incident." Emma exhaled in relief. She didn't want vengeance, but she needed boundaries. Just as she set the phone down, there was another knock. Her heart jumped. She moved slowly to the door, but this time when she looked through the peephole, it wasn't Ethan. It was a delivery man holding a brown Amazon box. "Package for Mrs. Emma Carter," he said cheerfully. She signed for it and brought it inside. Inside the box was a Kindle with a note. "A new habit for quieter nights, Mr." She smiled despite herself. Marco had a way of giving exactly what she didn't know she needed. Later that afternoon, Mrs. Kaplan stopped by in person. The lawyer, dressed in her usual navy suit and pearl earrings, carried a folder under one arm. "I thought we could go over a few documents together," she said warmly. "I also brought someone who wants to speak to you." Behind her stepped a man in a delivery uniform, the same one from Fifth Avenue. He looked nervous but determined. "Mrs. Carter," he began, "I'm David. I was the courier who saw what happened the day that woman mocked you. I never said anything before because, well, I didn't want to get involved. But I saw that video on TV and I couldn't stay quiet anymore." Emma blinked, surprised. "You saw it?" "I did. You were helping that old lady when those two came up. I remember thinking, what kind of people laugh at something like that?" He scratched his head. "I even told a security guard I'd testify if needed." Mrs. Kaplan smiled. "That's why I brought him. His statement will make your legal position unshakable if they try anything again." Emma's throat tightened. "Thank you," she said softly, "for remembering." David shrugged shyly. "The world's loud with bad people. Figured it's time someone spoke up for the good ones." After he left, Mrs. Kaplan reviewed the last of the documents. "One more thing," she said, sliding an envelope toward Emma. "Marco wanted you to see this." Inside was a printed email, correspondence between Vanessa and a local gossip site. The subject line read, "Exclusive footage, pregnant woman faking kindness." Attached was a payment confirmation. Emma's stomach twisted. "She sold that video?" Mrs. Kaplan nodded. "Yes, but it's good news. It gives us legal grounds to sue her for defamation and emotional damages." Emma sat quietly, thinking, "I don't want her money. I just want her to stop hurting people." "That's precisely why you'll win," Mrs. Kaplan said with a small smile. When the lawyer left, Emma curled up on the couch, turning on the Kindle Marco had sent. The first book already downloaded was Atomic Habits. She opened it and read the highlighted passage. "Every action you take is a vote for the person you wish to become." She placed her hand on her belly. "We're voting for strength now," she whispered. That night, as she drifted off to sleep, her phone buzzed once more. a message from Marco. The Rossi Foundation wants to start a new charity program for mothers in crisis. Would you help us design it? Emma stared at the screen, overwhelmed, and for the first time since her world had shattered, she felt like she was being invited not just to survive, but to build something beautiful out of the wreckage. By the next morning, Emma's story wasn't just viral, it had become a movement. The unedited footage had spread across every major platform, but now journalists were digging deeper. They discovered the transaction between Vanessa and the gossip outlet, the falsified captions, even her old PR stunts where she'd humiliated others for views. Cable networks called it the Fifth Avenue Redemption. Hashtags like kindness is power and #justice for Emma flooded Twitter. Emma sat at her kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea, scrolling through headlines on her MacBook Air. She couldn't quite believe any of it. Overnight, the world had flipped. The same internet that had mocked her was now defending her. Emma Carter, the woman who turned shame into strength. Pregnant mother's dignity shuts down online cruelty. Each headline felt surreal. She wasn't used to praise. She didn't trust it. The intercom buzzed. It was Mrs. Kaplan again, arriving with her usual air of controlled urgency. She carried a tablet and 2 manila folders. "You've officially become the story of the week," Kaplan said, setting her things down. "But with good attention comes bad attention. We need to prepare." Emma frowned. "Prepare for what?" "For Vanessa's next move," Kaplan replied. "She's not giving up quietly." Kaplan turned the tablet toward her. On the screen was a new article, Vanessa's exclusive interview. The headline read, "My Side of the Story, the Truth Behind the Viral Video." Emma's stomach twisted as she read. Vanessa painted herself as the real victim, claiming the footage had been manipulated and that the Rosses had used Emma to gain publicity for their family foundation. "She's twisting everything again," Emma whispered. Kaplan nodded. "She's desperate. But she made a mistake. She mentioned your unborn child. That violates privacy laws. We can counter immediately." Before Emma could respond, her phone lit up with another call, this time from Marco. "Don't worry." His calm voice came through. "I've already called a press conference. We're releasing the verified security footage with timestamps and legal authentication. Vanessa just buried herself." Emma hesitated. "I don't want more chaos, Marco. I'm tired." "I know," he said gently, "but you're not fighting alone anymore." That evening, the Rossi family's PR team uploaded the full footage, uncut, time-stamped, with a written statement from the boutique's legal office confirming its authenticity. It included one line that silenced all debate. Mrs. Emma Carter acted selflessly. She did not seek attention or reward. The backlash against Vanessa was immediate and brutal. Influencers who once praised her now distanced themselves. Sponsors issued apologies. A trending tweet read, "When lies crumble, truth doesn't need to shout." Meanwhile, Ethan's world kept falling apart. His firm issued an official statement denouncing all forms of unethical conduct. His name vanished from the company's website within 24 hours. At home, Vanessa was losing her grip. Her followers dropped by the thousands. She tried to go live on Instagram, but the comments flooded with ridicule. "You destroyed yourself," one comment read, "not Emma." In a desperate attempt to salvage her image, Vanessa posted a tearful apology video. But it felt hollow, rehearsed, commercial, fake. "I made mistakes," she sniffled, "but I was under pressure. The internet is cruel." Emma watched it once, then closed her laptop. She didn't even feel anger anymore. Only pity. Later that night, she sat with Eleanor and Marco at Rossi's trattoria, the warm scent of pasta and basil wrapped around her like comfort. "You handled this with grace," Eleanor said proudly. "That's rarer than power." Emma smiled faintly. "Maybe grace is power." Marco raised his glass of sparkling water. "To truth and to starting over." They clinked glasses. The sound was soft, but to Emma, it felt like a final note closing a painful symphony. Across the city, Vanessa stared at her dimming screen, the queen of image now dethroned by the very world she once controlled. And for the first time, silence answered her cries for attention. The city looked different from Marco Rossi's office, a glass fortress high above Park Avenue where every window reflected power and every conversation decided someone's fate. Emma had never been in a place like this before. The silence wasn't empty here. It was controlled, deliberate, the kind that made you whisper even when no one asked you to. Marco sat behind a sleek oak desk, a Mont Blanc pen resting neatly beside a folder. He looked up as she entered. "Emma," he greeted with a small smile, standing to pull out a chair for her. "Thank you for coming." She sat, nervous but curious. "You said it was important?" "Yes," he said, closing the folder. "There's something I need to tell you, about Ethan and Vanessa." Emma's stomach tightened. "What about them?" Marco hesitated, then handed her a printed document, an internal email chain from Braden Real Estate. At the top was Ethan's name, copied on messages about confidential client data being sent to Vanessa's personal account. Emma scanned the words, disbelief washing over her. "They were selling client lists?" Marco nodded. "To competitors. Vanessa orchestrated it, but Ethan participated. The firm discovered it this week after the scandal broke. They're trying to avoid legal charges by blaming her, but," he trailed off, eyes steady, "he's not innocent." Emma leaned back, pressing a hand to her belly. The baby moved, gentle but grounding. "He risked everything. For her." "Yes," Marco said softly, "and for greed." For a long moment, neither spoke. Outside the glass wall, Manhattan pulsed with life. Taxis streaming below, stock tickers flashing across digital screens. Power everywhere, invisible but intoxicating. Marco finally broke the silence. "I wanted you to hear this from me. The authorities may reach out, but you're protected. Kaplan has already ensured your name won't be dragged into it." Emma exhaled shakily. "I don't want to see him go to prison. He's still the father of my child." Marco studied her. "Compassion even now. That's rare." She looked out the window, eyes distant. "I used to think forgiveness was weakness, but maybe it's just letting go before hate poisons you." Marco smiled faintly. "That's a strength I've never mastered." Their conversation was interrupted by Kaplan entering the room. "Sorry to intrude," she said briskly, holding a legal envelope. "The DA's office just confirmed charges against Vanessa. Fraud, defamation, and breach of contract. Ethan's been called in for questioning." Emma's lips parted. "Already?" Kaplan nodded. "When power falls, it falls fast." She turned to Marco. "I've drafted a formal statement for the foundation, distancing both of you from their mess." Marco gestured to Emma. "She decides what to say. It's her story." Emma hesitated, fingers trembling slightly as she opened the document. The statement was simple, factual, polished, sterile. She read it twice, then shook her head. "It's too cold." Kaplan blinked. "Cold?" Emma looked up, voice steady. "This isn't just about lawsuits and PR. This was about how people treat each other. I want the statement to say that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing peace when cruelty begs for revenge." Kaplan and Marco exchanged glances. Then Marco nodded. "We'll release it your way." When Kaplan left, Marco stood by the window, his reflection framed by the skyline. "You know," he said quietly, "people fear power because they think it corrupts. But sometimes, power just reveals who we already are." Emma rose, joining him at the glass. "Then I hope I stay small," she said softly, "because small things grow, like kindness, like children, like hope." Marco turned to her, admiration flickering in his eyes. "You're not small, Emma, you're grounded. And that's far rarer than power." Outside, sirens wailed faintly below, the city swallowing another scandal, while above it all, Emma stood tall in her truth, untouched by the greed that had consumed everyone else. A week later, the city's energy had shifted again. The chaos was fading, replaced by whispers of admiration. Strangers now smiled at Emma on the street, cashiers offered to carry her bags, and for once, the internet wasn't cruel. It was kind. Her story had stopped being gossip. It had become a symbol. Emma Carter, the pregnant woman once mocked on Fifth Avenue, was now quietly rebuilding her life. That morning, she returned to her old office for the first time since everything happened. The building stood tall near Madison Avenue, polished glass, suited people, the scent of espresso and ambition lingering in the air. Her former boss, Miss Howard, met her in the lobby, her eyes warm with apology. "Emma," she said, embracing her gently. "I saw the gala. I should have called sooner. You handled yourself with such grace." Emma smiled modestly. "Thank you. I didn't do it alone." "Still," Miss Howard said, "we could use someone like you again. We've missed your energy." Emma blinked. "You mean, come back?" "Yes, flexible hours, work from home when you need to. We'll accommodate the baby. You've earned it." Emma hesitated, emotion catching in her throat. She'd thought her career was over, that she'd be defined forever by one cruel video. But life, it seemed, had other plans. Okay, she whispered. I'd love that. When she left the office, she stood outside for a long moment, watching the crowd. People rushed by, faces buried in phones chasing time. Yet she felt still, grounded. She wasn't rushing anymore. That evening, she met Eleanor and Marco for dinner at a quiet cafe overlooking Central Park. The city lights shimmered on the water like melted gold. Eleanor poured her a glass of sparkling cider and smiled. To new beginnings. Emma raised her glass. To peace. Marco's phone buzzed on the table, but he silenced it immediately. Work can wait, he said simply. Tonight is about you. Emma laughed softly. You always make it sound like I did something heroic. All I did was tell the truth. Marco leaned back, studying her. In this city, that's the bravest thing anyone can do. Eleanor nodded in agreement. You've reminded people that grace doesn't need wealth, only courage. They talked for hours, about the foundation project, the baby, and how the world could use more stories that healed rather than hurt. Marco showed her the early designs for the charity program, the Carter Initiative, for mothers in crisis. Emma's name was at the top, her eyes widened. Marco, this is too much. It's exactly enough, he said. You turned pain into purpose. Now it can help others do the same. For the first time, she didn't argue. She simply smiled, her heart full. When dinner ended, Marco insisted on driving her home. The city glowed outside the car window, alive and endless. They stopped briefly at a red light near the corner of Fifth Avenue, the same place where everything had started. Emma looked out at the spot where she had knelt beside Mrs. Rossi weeks ago. It was quiet now, just another piece of New York pavement. But in her mind, it was sacred, the place where humiliation became transformation. Marco followed her gaze. Strange how life circles back, he murmured. Emma nodded. No, she said softly. It moves forward. I just finally stopped looking behind me. He smiled, proud. You really have changed. Maybe, she said, resting a hand on her belly. Or maybe I just remembered who I was before they made me doubt it. When he dropped her off, he said simply, You know, you don't owe the world strength every day. She smiled. I know, but I owe it to my child. As she walked up the stairs to her apartment, the silver bracelet caught the light again, the words engraved on it gleaming like truth itself. Kindness is never wasted. And for the first time, she finally believed it. The morning of the press hearing was cool and gray, the kind of day when Manhattan held its breath. Emma stood before the courthouse steps, wearing a simple black dress beneath her tan trench coat. Her hair was pulled back neatly, and the silver bracelet glinted every time she moved her hand. She wasn't here to fight anymore. She was here to close a chapter. The Rossi Foundation's legal team had arranged everything. Marco stood nearby, quietly talking to the reporters, while Mrs. Kaplan adjusted her notes. Eleanor Rossi, dignified as ever, stayed behind Emma, offering silent strength. Across the courtyard, Vanessa Reed stepped out of a black car surrounded by flashing cameras. The woman who once strutted down red carpets now looked fragile, pale under heavy makeup. She clutched her lawyer's arm as if it were a lifeline. The paparazzi shouted questions, but Vanessa's eyes darted nervously toward Emma. Their gazes met for the first time since the Plaza Gala. Vanessa looked away first. Ethan wasn't with her. He was already inside, waiting to give his statement. Emma didn't want to see him, not out of anger, but because she had finally let go. When the judge entered the courtroom, the buzz fell into respectful silence. The case wasn't about money anymore. Vanessa had already agreed to a settlement. This was about acknowledgement, about truth. Vanessa's lawyer began with a speech about media distortion and personal stress. It sounded rehearsed, empty. When he finished, the judge turned to Emma. Mrs. Carter, he said, would you like to make a statement? Emma stood slowly. Every eye in the room followed her. Her voice was calm, steady. I'm not here to ruin anyone's life, she said. I just want to make sure the next woman who's mocked for doing something kind doesn't have to feel what I felt. She paused, looking at Vanessa. When you filmed me that day, you didn't just record a moment. You tried to define me with it. But people aren't headlines or clips or mistakes frozen on a screen. We're more than that. Vanessa's lip quivered. For a second, guilt flickered in her eyes. Emma continued, I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because my child deserves a mother who doesn't carry bitterness. The room was silent, except for the sound of camera shutters. Even the judge seemed moved. Marco watched from the back, his expression unreadable but proud. Eleanor wiped away a tear discreetly. The judge nodded slowly. "Thank you, Mrs. Carter. Your words carry weight." When the hearing ended, the reporters swarmed as Emma stepped outside. Questions came rapid fire. "Emma, how does it feel to finally have justice? Do you believe Vanessa's apology? What's next for you?" Emma smiled faintly. "Justice isn't about who wins or loses," she said. "It's about learning. I hope we all did." She turned away from the microphones, walking down the courthouse steps with her head held high. Behind her, Vanessa stopped at the top step, trembling as reporters shouted at her. Her lawyer whispered for her to keep walking, but she froze, overwhelmed by the glare of truth she couldn't escape. Emma reached the car where Marco waited. "You did well," he said quietly as he opened the door for her. She sighed, easing into the seat. "It's over." "Not quite," Marco said with a small smile. "The foundation board voted to fund 3 shelters under your initiative. The first will open next month." Emma's hand flew to her heart. 3? Yes. One of them will be in Queens, close to where you grew up. She blinked back tears. "You're serious?" "Completely." As the car pulled away, the courthouse faded into the distance. Emma rested a hand on her belly, whispering, "See, baby? Kindness really does come back." And while the city moved on to its next story, the woman they once called weak walked quietly into history. Not as a scandal, but as proof that dignity, when tested, only grows stronger. 2 weeks after the court hearing, the city was finally calm. The storm of cameras, questions, and opinions had passed. Emma's name no longer trended on social media, and that was exactly how she wanted it. She'd traded noise for peace and fame for quiet mornings with tea, soft music, and the baby's heartbeat echoing in her chest. That morning, the air smelled like rain. Emma sat on her small balcony overlooking Central Park, folding baby clothes that Eleanor had gifted her. Tiny socks, a soft blue blanket, a onesie embroidered with "Be brave, little one." Her phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a message from an unfamiliar number. "I'd like to talk, just once. Please, Ethan." She stared at the text for a long time. Part of her wanted to ignore it. Another part, the one that believed in closure, knew she had to face it, not for him, but for herself. They met that afternoon at a small cafe near the park. Ethan looked thinner, older, the weight of consequence heavy on his face. Gone was the polished man who measured his worth by designer suits and company cars. "Thank you for meeting me," he said quietly as she sat down. Emma nodded. "I wasn't sure I would." He gave a sad smile. "You should have stayed away. I wouldn't blame you." She looked at him, calm but distant. "I'm not here to blame, just to understand." Ethan stared at his coffee. "When Vanessa came along, I thought she made me feel alive. Truth is, she just made me feel powerful, and I mistook power for happiness." Emma said nothing. He looked up, eyes tired. "I lost everything, Emma. The job, the respect, even myself. I've been doing therapy, trying to understand how I became that man." Her gaze softened slightly. "That's a start," he nodded. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it, but I want to be part of the baby's life, if you'll let me." Emma's fingers brushed her teacup. She thought of all the nights she'd cried alone, all the mornings she'd promised her unborn child a better world. And she remembered what she'd told Marco, that peace mattered more than revenge. "I'll never deny our child a father," she said finally. "But I'll also never allow him to see what betrayal looks like. If you want to be in his life, you'll have to be honest, stable, and kind, every single day." Ethan's eyes glistened. "I will be. I swear it." Emma stood, smoothing her coat. "Then prove it. Not to me, to him." She left him sitting there, tears blurring the reflection in his coffee cup. For once, he didn't chase after her. Outside, the rain had stopped. She walked slowly toward the park, her shoes brushing against wet leaves. Every breath felt lighter, freer. That evening, she visited Eleanor at the new foundation office. The sign on the door read, "The Carter Initiative, empowering mothers, restoring dignity." Volunteers moved in and out, carrying boxes of books and baby supplies. Marco was there too, sleeves rolled up, reviewing paperwork. When he saw her, his smile reached his eyes. "Everything's coming together," he said. "We open next week." Emma looked around, her heart swelling. "It's beautiful. You made this happen?" He shook his head. "No, Emma, you did. You gave this city a reason to remember compassion." Eleanor joined them, handing Emma a small envelope. Inside was a lease agreement for an apartment in a quiet, safe neighborhood near the park. "For you and the baby," Eleanor said. "Consider it our thank you." Emma's throat tightened. "You've already given me enough." Eleanor smiled gently. "This isn't charity, it's gratitude." As Emma looked out the window that night, she saw the lights of Manhattan stretching endlessly into the distance, the same city that had once broken her. Now it was the city she would raise her child in. Proof that healing doesn't erase pain, it transforms it into strength that never fades. The baby shower was held at Rossi's Trattoria, the same restaurant where Emma had first met Marco weeks ago, the place where everything had changed. This time, the tables were covered with soft white linens, pastel balloons floated near the ceiling, and laughter filled the air. For once, the room wasn't filled with judgment or gossip. It was filled with love. Eleanor stood at the center, greeting guests with her timeless grace. "She deserves a celebration," she told everyone, smiling proudly at Emma. "After everything, this woman taught us what dignity looks like." Emma blushed, her hand resting on her round belly. She'd worn a light blue maternity dress, simple yet elegant, her hair falling in soft curls. She still couldn't quite believe it. All these people, gathered not because of scandal, but because they wanted to share her joy. Lily, her old friend from work, arrived carrying a basket of baby books and smiled wide. "Look at you, glowing. You're finally happy again." Emma laughed, trying to be. "It still feels strange. Good, but strange." Lily grinned. "That's what peace feels like. You're just not used to it yet." Across the room, Marco helped the staff bring out trays of desserts, cupcakes decorated with tiny blue booties and sugar stars. When he passed by Emma, he handed her a small wrapped box. "From me and my mother," he said softly. Emma opened it carefully. Inside was a white Mont Blanc pen, engraved with silver letters, "For your next chapter." Her breath caught. "Marco, this is too much." "It's exactly enough," he said. "You'll write a new story now, maybe even a book about everything you've learned." She smiled through tears. "I wouldn't even know where to start." He looked at her with quiet certainty. "Start where the pain ended." For a while, everything was perfect. They played light-hearted games, shared stories, and took pictures in front of a banner that read, "Welcome, little miracle." Emma felt her baby kick as if he could sense the laughter around him. Then Ethan appeared at the doorway. He stood hesitantly, holding a small bouquet of white lilies. The room fell quiet for a moment, unsure of how to react. Emma's heart skipped, not in fear but in memory. Eleanor walked toward him first, calm but firm. "You were invited?" Ethan nodded awkwardly. "I sent a message. I wasn't sure she'd say yes, but I had to try." Emma hesitated, then gave a small nod. "It's okay," she said softly. "Let him in." He stepped closer, his eyes fixed on her belly. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said. "I just wanted to bring something for the baby." He placed a small wrapped box on the table. Inside was a silver rattle engraved with the words, "To my son, love, Dad." The gesture was simple, but it carried something genuine. Emma looked at him for a long time before replying. "Thank you, Ethan." He swallowed hard. "I'm trying to be better, I promise." "I know," she said. "Just keep trying." Eleanor nodded approvingly, and Marco placed a hand lightly on Emma's shoulder, a silent shield if she needed one. Later, when the guests began to leave, Emma stepped outside for fresh air. The night was calm, stars faint above the Manhattan skyline. Marco joined her, standing quietly beside her as the city lights flickered in the distance. "You handled that well," he said. "Most people would have turned him away." Emma smiled faintly. "Forgiveness isn't weakness, it's how I move forward." He looked at her, admiration soft in his eyes. "You've come a long way from the woman I met on Fifth Avenue." She laughed quietly. "That woman's still here. She just learned how to stand taller." The wind rustled the banner inside, making the words "little miracle" flutter like a promise. And as Emma placed her hand on her belly, she realized that tonight wasn't just a celebration for her baby. It was the night she finally forgave herself for ever doubting her own strength. The city was asleep when the first contraction hit. It was just past midnight, rain whispering softly against the windows of Emma's apartment. At first, she thought it was another restless night. But when the second pain came, sharp and deep, she knew the moment had arrived. She grabbed her hospital bag, the one Eleanor helped her pack weeks ago, and called Marco. Her voice was trembling. "It's time." I'm on my way, he said without hesitation. 15 minutes later, headlights cut through the wet streets as Marco's Mercedes pulled up. He jumped out, holding an umbrella. Come on, he said, helping her down the stairs. Careful, steady. You're doing great. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and hope. Nurses rushed to assist, guiding Emma to a room, checking her vitals, reassuring her with calm smiles. Eleanor arrived soon after, her hair damp from the rain but her spirit fierce. I told you he'd come early, she teased gently, holding Emma's hand. Hours passed like moments. Between the pain and the haze, Emma remembered every reason she had to fight, every humiliation that had led her to this room, and how it all suddenly made sense. At dawn, a cry filled the room, strong, beautiful, alive. The doctor smiled. It's a boy. Tears blurred her vision as they placed him on her chest. His skin was warm, his tiny fingers curling around hers like he'd been searching for her all along. Hi, baby, she whispered, her voice breaking. We did it. Outside the glass, Marco stood quietly, watching through the window. He wasn't family, not by blood, but the nurses could tell he belonged there, the steady guardian who'd helped hold her world together. Ethan came later, after Marco and Eleanor had gone home to let her rest. He stood by the doorway, hesitant, unsure if he was welcome. Emma looked up, exhausted but peaceful. He's sleeping, she said softly. Ethan stepped closer, his eyes red. He's beautiful. He looks like you, she said with a small smile. He exhaled shakily. I'm so sorry, Emma, for everything, for the lies, the cowardice, all of it. She looked at him, really looked, and saw not the man who betrayed her, but the man who had finally learned remorse. The best apology, she said quietly, is to become the kind of father he can be proud of. He nodded, tears falling freely now. I'll spend the rest of my life trying. When he left, she didn't feel sadness, only closure. A week later, the world knew again, but this time, not through scandal. News outlets covered the Carter Initiative's grand opening. The ribbon-cutting ceremony took place in Queens, at a bright, sunlit building filled with volunteers, mothers, and children. Emma stood before the crowd, her son in her arms, the silver bracelet catching the light. Marco spoke first. This foundation began with one act of kindness, a woman who chose compassion when the world chose cruelty. Today, that kindness becomes legacy. Applause filled the air. Cameras flashed. Emma took a deep breath, then stepped forward to the microphone. I once thought kindness made me small, she said, but I learned that it's the opposite. Kindness builds empires of healing. It's the only power that doesn't destroy. She looked down at her son. I want him to grow up in a world where people choose empathy over judgment. And if I can be part of building that, then everything I went through was worth it. The crowd rose to their feet in applause. Eleanor wept quietly in the front row. Marco smiled, pride shining in his eyes. That evening, as the sun set over the skyline, Emma stood outside the news center, rocking her baby gently. The city lights shimmered on the horizon, the same lights that once witnessed her pain, now illuminating her victory. She whispered to her son, "We're safe now, and the world isn't so cruel after all." Because when kindness survives everything meant to break it, that's not weakness, that's power. So, that's how the story ends, my dear friends. You're still here, aren't you? If you've stayed with me until now, maybe something in this story has touched your heart, the way quiet truth often does. Emma's journey reminds us that kindness is not weakness, that dignity isn't found in revenge but in rising again with grace. Life will test us, humiliate us, and break us in places we didn't know could bend. But as Marcus Aurelius once wrote, the obstacle is the way. Every wound can become a doorway to strength if we choose to see it that way. Maybe you too have been through moments where the world misunderstood your heart. If so, let this story be a small light in your darkness. A reminder that your worth isn't defined by what they say, but by how you continue to love, to forgive, and to stand tall. If this story made you feel something, even just a spark, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope tonight, and subscribe to our channel. We'll keep telling stories that heal, remind, and make us all a little braver together. Because kindness, my friend, is never wasted.